shifting geometry of Imperial war zones. From the steady cadence of the pulse lasgun, the Guard's armories turned their attention to distance, to those stretches of battlefield where terrain folds and atmospheric haze blur the line between visibility and uncertainty. Out of this need emerged the long-shot lasgun, a weapon that did not amplify power so much as refine the path along which it traveled, narrowing the beam into a tighter, more disciplined filament of heat, capable of holding its coherence across extended ranges. It became the tool of marksmen positioned on fractured rooftops, observation decks, and the skeletal remains of manufactorum gantries, where a shot had to pass through shifting currents of ash and dust without bleeding intensity. The long shot did not aspire to the precision of a true sniper instrument, but instead offered stability, a reliable arc of energy that allowed commanders to shape the battlefield by influencing threats before they neared the line. Yet even this extended reach could not answer every demand, for the Guard often fought in places where the enemy moved behind cover too dense for a las beam to penetrate. Conditions where a standard rifle's tolerances were insufficient. It was not a weapon of extravagance, but of calibration, shaped so every component maintained consistency in temperature, charge distribution, and beam clarity even after prolonged engagement, giving its operators a sense of mechanical certainty that mirrored their disciplined movements. This pursuit of controlled precision laid the implicit groundwork for the sniper lasgun, a weapon that abandoned the flexibility of line fire and instead concentrated on deliberate, singular shots taken from positions where patience mattered more than volume. Unlike the long shot, which extended the reach of ordinary soldiers, the sniper lasgun narrowed its focus to the stillness of concealed alcoves, broken towers, and ridgeline crests, where a single pulse of stabilized energy needed to travel across vast distances without distortion. Its reinforced frame absorbed minute vibrations, its capacitors delivered measured bursts, and its optics aligned the beam with a clarity that turned the act of firing into a quiet negotiation between distance and intent, allowing leading engineers toward the experimental plasma-fused lasgun, a hybrid whose core blended conventional capacitors with a compact thermal chamber. The resulting discharge carried a brief, searing impulse at its center, strong enough to disturb reinforced plating or scorch the shielding of armored constructs, without surrendering the control and reliability expected from a las-based weapon. It became a rare but telling presence on the battlefield, a sign of adaptation pushed to its limits, where the familiar clarity of the Guard's weaponry met the unstable edge of experimental heat, completing a lineage that evolved not through ambition, but through the shifting geometry of war that never stops demanding more. In the quiet that follows the harsh radiance of the plasma-fused lasgun, the entire sequence of Imperial laser weaponry reveals itself not as a ladder of escalating power, but as a branching structure shaped by need, each model carrying forward a fragment of the same disciplined light. What began as a simple beam meant to steady the hands of frightened soldiers has grown into an array of instruments able to viewed from a distance that war itself rarely grants. The spread of these rifles across countless regiments begins to resemble a kind of quiet cartography, each model marking a different contour of the Imperial front. The standard beams that flicker through dust-filled air in the trenches are the same currents of light that, when refined or concentrated, travel along the curved interior walls of starships or through the narrow arteries of hive cities. Their presence shapes the atmosphere long before any enemy is seen. A faint ozone tang, a pulse of red or white against metal bulkheads, the subtle hum of capacitors charging in unison as squads prepare to advance. Even the more intricate or experimental variants carry that same foundational signature, a reminder that despite specialization, despite the recoil-dampened precision of the long-range frames or the scorching ripples of hybrid chambers, every las beam originates from the same underlying intent, to impose clarity where chaos thrives. It is a clarity that does not shout, but presses forward with an unbroken steadiness, a line of radiance that cuts takes on a darker sheen as moisture seeps beneath its plating. A heavy variant stationed on a wind-scoured ridge grows cold enough that its casing rings faintly when handled. Yet, none of these environments alter the essential rhythm within, the measured rise of stored energy, the soft pulse of readiness that persists whether the rifle is braced against a foxhole's edge or held at rest during a storm of dust and static. Even the more advanced patterns share this quiet constancy, their adjustments and augmentations layered atop a reliability that has been tested across more campaigns than any soldier can recount. In this way, the weapons act as silent witnesses to the shifting fronts, carrying traces of every terrain, every ruined corridor, every dawn that breaks over a battlefield not yet claimed by either side. And as soldiers move, fall, rise, and are replaced, the rifles remain steady in their design, absorbing the slow accumulation of war's landscapes while continuing to offer the same unwavering line of light whenever the moment demands it. And when the long rhythm of a campaign finally begins to taper, when the echoes of bombardments fade into the background and the air grows still enough that dust settles on the barrels and sights without being immediately scattered by motion or gunfire, these weapons assume their quietest form. They lie in racks within dim barracks or rest across the folded cloaks of soldiers sleeping in shifts, their once hot emitters now cool, their capacitors idling with the faintest thrum, as though the rifles themselves are taking a measured breath after enduring more than any single regiment ever could. In these moments, the distinctions between patterns blur, and the elite variants, the heavy frames, the experimental chambers, and the simplest line rifles all look strangely similar. Tools shaped by the same purpose, worn by the same demands, and tempered by the same long pressure of unending war. The traces of ash, moisture, grit, and thermal scoring that cling to their casings become the only markers of where they have been, silent impressions of landscapes and battles that no report can fully capture. And as the lamps dim in these temporary shelters or aboard the holds of returning transports, the familiar weight of the last weapon seems leaves the field.